You may recognize Dr. Peter McCullough from when he stood up to the government and the medical community regarding a certain jab that was introduced in 2020. Perhaps you've seen him on an interview with Joe Rogan, Judge Janine, Joni Lamb, Dr. Drew, and so much more. Dr. McCullough joins us on the show to discuss the bird flu, monkeypox, LGBTQIA+, and so much more. Don't miss one moment today on the Endtime Show. Welcome to the Endtime Show. Vince Stegall here with Doug Norvell. If you weren't following the news, a massive hit to the U.S. dollar came last month when Saudi Arabia did not renew the 50-year petrodollar deal with the U.S. So I ask you, if there's less demand for the dollar, what happens to the dollar? It's reasons like this that Americans turned to Birch Gold Group. For over 20 years, Birch Gold has helped tens of thousands of Americans protect their savings by converting an IRA or 401k into an IRA into physical gold. To learn more, visit birchgold.com/endtime. Claim your free, no obligation info kit on gold. Again, visit birchgold.com/endtime today. Now, we need y'all's help. Today is a very special day for us. I mentioned the name Dr. Peter McCullough, and all the robots over at Meta and YouTube, their eyes started twitching. They don't want you to see this video, so we need your help. Share the video now. Give us a heart, not just the blue thumbs up, and be sure to comment what you're thinking throughout the show. We're going to have an incredible discussion today, and it's my honor and privilege to introduce to you Dr. Peter McCullough. Welcome to the Endtime Show.
Wow, Vince, great to be here. Doug, thank you.
Yes, sir, thank you.
That's right. The name alone is worthy of censorship. It doesn't even have any content. It's immediately vaporized. So somehow the name alone strikes fear into the AI algorithms of Meta.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, Dr. McCullough, a lot of people walk into a room, a lot of people probably have you on their show thinking, what can I get? One thing that we try to live by here, and when we have people on or have anybody in the building, we ask the question, what can we give? And we sincerely ask the Lord, help us to be able to give something. And so I felt like it would be wonderful to start this show, and maybe we could give you a little information that maybe you've never heard of before, maybe you have, and just get your raw response from it. I hope that's okay.
Yeah.
So one thing we do, the name End Time, we explain current events through a lens of Bible prophecy. In the book of Daniel, in the last chapter, Daniel asked the Lord, please help me understand what I've written. And the Lord says, well, it's not for you to understand, it's for the people of the end. And when we go back, Daniel chapter 7, he talks about these beasts, and we learn that these beasts represents kings or kingdoms. So we know already that these kings or kingdoms will be on earth at the time of the end, just before the second coming of Jesus Christ. Now, everybody that watches the show regularly, they know I call Doug the guru, because this guy is a master at talking about this. Doug, help Dr. Peter McCullough know what those beasts are in chapter 7 of Daniel.
Well, Dr. McCullough, Daniel saw a lion, and it had the wings of an eagle. And he says this was the first beast he saw. He watched until the wings were plucked off of this lion, and it was made to stand up as a man, and man's heart was given to it. Well, we know that these are symbols of nations that'll be here, and we know from that chapter that they'll be here when Christ comes back. So we know that they're not ancient Babylon and some of the things that some of the writers that wrote the notes in the Bible believe they are. They've got to be nations that exist now. So there's a nation that symbol is a lion. And there's also a nation whose symbol is the eagle. And the eagle actually came out of the lion, and it's Great Britain and the United States of America. And then he also saw a bear that had 3 ribs in its mouth, and it was told to rise and devour much. Well, we know that there's a nation called Russia that has this symbol as a bear. And then he saw a leopard with 4 heads, and it says that dominion was given to this animal. And so this beast had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it 4 different times. We know that Hitler's Reich was called the Third Reich, and when the Berlin Wall came up, everybody thought Germany was dead forever. But when the wall came down, Germany reunited, and it's now stronger than ever before. And we believe it's in its fourth Reich, which would account for the fourth head. And then there's a fourth beast that had 10 horns, and we believe this is the actual rebirth of the Holy Roman Empire. And we know that the EU actually is the rebirth of that Holy Roman Empire with the Lisbon Treaty. So we look at these beasts, and we see all the way in Revelation 13, John sees the same beast, but now they're joined together.
And this is why I want to talk about this to start, because you talk a lot about the World Economic Forum, a lot about government control, and
world
since
government.
we see this thing developing in the last days, here we are looking at this, and listen to this, Doctor. This is unbelievable, actually.
Yeah, so John sees a beast that is now joined together. It's one beast. It has 7 heads, has 10 horns, the mouth of a lion, the body of the leopard, and the feet of the bear.
But a lot like Daniel.
Yeah, just like Daniel, but it's a combined beast now. And the eagle's wings are missing from this beast. They're not in that world government beast. He says that the devil, he says the dragon, who is the devil, will give it his power, his seat, and his great authority. So the devil will actually rule it with the Antichrist. And so that's what we believe is happening with these world foundations, the WHO, the WEF, the Rockefeller Foundation, the Gates Foundation. All these different foundations are all paying into this world system. And so with that, that's kind of why we wanted to share that with you today, because we know this is a global thing. This is not just the United States of America. This is a global thing that they're trying to push. And it seems like a lot of it points back to the WEF, Klaus Schwab, and a lot of these people that are part of the WEF within every government in the world. I mean, even our own government have people who are in the WEF, and we believe that's the main thing that's running the show, is all those heads coming together, and it's all part of the one world government.
And it's all in the open.
Yes.
Say it's all in the open. That's the interesting. There's no secrecy here. We don't have to, deeply investigate.
Yeah.
When Klaus Schwab, the head of the World Economic Forum, aspires to have a new world order, what does he mean? Is he on the top of the order or the bottom? Where am I on the order? Let me guess. When Yuval Harari says there's too many useless eaters, right? When the Fourth Industrial Revolution by Schwab in 2017 says that, the environment won't change, but the human body will.
Right.
Right? So the environment doesn't change, but the human body does. Transhumanism. Everything we're going to talk about has a common theme. It's global, and it's simultaneous, and it is in the minds of people right now. Something's happened. There's no doubt about it. I'm not an expert in theology, and I was always told the book of Revelations is upper level course material. However, I have been all over the world. I've talked to Muslims, Jews, all the different branches and denominations of Christianity, people in China. They all sense that we have entered a time of an epic battle between good and evil.
Amen. Yeah.
So do you think we're crazy when we tell you what these scriptures are saying? You're an expert on a lot of this world government stuff. I've sent you clips. I've texted you clips and said, you're starting to sound like you're a host on the Endtime Show. You're an expert on all this. Can you see how this is all coming together, and it appears that this world government system in Revelation is actually here?
We're trying to understand a mind-blowing reality. That's the most difficult part about it. And there's only a small fraction of people who are even, in a sense, we say aware or awake or alerted to try to grapple with this understanding. The average person is listening to their ringtones and texting on their cell phone and going to work or school every day and going home. And they're just oblivious to this really rapid pace that we've seen. In my book, Courage to Face COVID-19, we call it a biopharmaceutical complex, because it's not just economic and geopolitical. A lot of this has tentacles into biology, plants, animals, humans. A recent example is the WHO's attempt to achieve dominion over all plants, animals, and humans through the Pandemic Treaty Alliance and the International Health Regulations.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a complete runaway. Can you imagine the WHO saying, here we are in Dallas, Texas, and there's a pandemic. Everybody get inside now. No exceptions.
Right.
They wanted that power.
Yeah. And they came really close, and they're going to keep trying. We know that they're going to try again. Next May, they'll try it again, and it just keeps coming at us. The thing that you mentioned there, you said that they want dominion over everything, animals, land, everything. Explain that a little bit for our audience. We talk about it a lot, but from your perspective, I'd like them to hear what that means when they say that.
Well, more broadly, when we define the biopharmaceutical complex, we think at the top is the World Economic Forum. Kind of the executor part of this machinery is the World Health Organization. Mm-hmm. We're talking about, the World Health Organization has 8,000 employees. Multi-billion-dollar budgets. We're talking major, there's like major corporations, but also the Gates Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, the Wellcome Trust, the Global Vaccine Alliance, Gavi. A key intermediary group in the United States is UNAID. It's a liaison group to the U.S. government. We have CEPI, Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovation, founded by Gates and WEF.
Right.
We have all of the regulatory agencies now fully connected. So we have MHRA in the UK, SAFRA in South Africa, EMA in Europe, TGA in Australia, US FDA, CDC, NIH in the United States. They, in a sense, are completely synchronized. They are now working in lockstep. The suppliers on the biological side are in vitro diagnostic companies, companies that make therapeutics, companies that make vaccines. They're integrated as suppliers, and you know they're working as a syndicate because of the movement of people. Mm-hmm. And it took time to fall into place. You mentioned the World Economic Forum Global Leaders Program. That's been going on a long time, but you're right, there has been a grooming from Trudeau in Canada to Ardern in New Zealand. Our current Director of National Intelligence, Avril Haines, is a World Economic Forum operative. Wow. She's controlling our national intelligence. So we have a situation where the syndicate is working, and you see people moving within the syndicate. 9 out of the 10 last FDA commissioners in the United States now work in the syndicate. They work for various biopharmaceutical companies. People on the White House task force are in the syndicate. You saw Scott Gottlieb, who's one of my contemporaries, former commissioner of the FDA. He was, during the pandemic, on CNBC advising people to take Pfizer vaccines as a former FDA commissioner because he's on the board of Pfizer. Stephen Hahn, who worked to advance the vaccines, block hydroxychloroquine and other drugs, he now works for Flagship, the venture capital firm for Moderna. Top public health advisor in the UK, works for Moderna now, the top one in Denmark. Moderna co-owns the patents with the United States. You can see how this is now synthesized. But it doesn't stop with humans. Your question was, well, World Health Organization, aren't we talking about human health? No. We're talking about veterinary health, the food supply.
Right.
This idea that has been promulgated, particularly in Europe, that the cows are producing too much carbon dioxide, they're producing too much nitrogen, the runoff, that there has to be more and more green space, fewer and fewer animals. It's thrown the whole farming community in an uproar. You've seen farmers in their tractors up and down the roads. It's happened in Europe and Ireland. It's all completely fabricated, completely unnecessary. And now we have it coming to the United States in bird flu. Now there's a manufactured bird flu crisis. Listen, this has been going on now for several years. We're hearing these warnings, and not much fanfare behind it. McCullough Foundation is reporting this on X, that not only has there been all these warnings that bird flu is coming, it's going to be this deadly pandemic, disease X, that now the several states have declared states of emergency, Colorado and Michigan.
Right.
Government-controlled mass PCR testing of healthy poultry. We have government orders to kill large numbers of healthy chickens. It's called culling as a biosecurity measure. And the most nefarious part about the whole bird flu pandemic is the current strain looks like it's a product of gain-of-function research right out of our own USDA Poultry Research Center in Athens, Georgia. That's where the current strain came from. They got it to jump into mallard ducks. That's what they were trying to do. University of Wisconsin played a role. Erasmus University in the Netherlands played a role. So as they were able to get through serial passage the virus to go into a mallard duck, probably one got out. Now it's spreading all over, because the mallard ducks are the most common waterfowl there are, and they just fly, and they just go. So the farms get infected, then they get reinfected. It's a hopeless endeavor. In fact, the government agencies haven't explained, well, why does a farm in Amarillo have bird flu? Then why does one in Michigan have one? Why? Because the mallard ducks are flying around. I mean, you can see how, how inane this whole story is.
Right.
Now, the good news is, in many ways, God steps in. Through natural processes, the virus does get more benign, just like it did with COVID. And here, while the host range has been expanded, it's a far milder virus. This is astonishing. So there's been no reports of mallard ducks floating in ponds dead.
Right.
No reports of large numbers of poultry dying. No serious human cases in the United States. It's been literally mild pink eye. In fact, the workers get it because they're ordered to cull or kill the chickens. And so the chickens are fled around. That's how they get it. So it's completely counterproductive. Now today's announcement that now they're going to be testing milk, mandatory testing of milk for bird flu in milk. It's been around for 100 years. It's like there's parainfluenza. There's all kinds of viruses that human beings and animals get. Natural immunity. It's far milder. And what the biopharmaceutical complex is using is legacy mortality data. Mm-hmm. They're saying, it has a 40 to 50% mortality. Well, that's from 10 years ago in Southeast Asia, where in Vietnam, in places where families sleep with chickens. They get a massive exposure. They get no health care, and they presented probably late with superimposed pneumonia. So I've gone on record as saying, listen, we're not going to lose a single human being to bird flu in modern-day medicine. We should stop the mass PCR testing, stop the culling or intentional killing of poultry, no animal vaccines, and no human vaccines. And yet the European Medicine Agency bought $40 million worth of vaccines. Wow. Finland's already vaccinating humans. The United States just invested $176 million in Moderna to develop messenger RNA, the most dangerous form of a vaccine, bird flu vaccines for humans. And we have a situation where this is now the third mass pandemic effort. We've had COVID-19, we've had monkeypox, and bird flu. And the difference between monkeypox and bird flu and COVID is now we're on top of it. We're actually talking like we're doing now.
Wow.
Dr. McCullough, there are so many bunny trails I want to go down with everything you just said. I'll start with, I have chickens and ducks. What do I do when the government says you need to kill all your chickens and ducks?
Right now, 18% of farmers are saying, fine, come on the property. The government pays you for each PCR test pretty handsomely, and they'll pay you to kill the chickens and ducks. But only 18% of farmers are doing it because they've heard the message.
Right.
They know this is a bunch of bull. And from the time there's an egg to a full-grown chicken in the kind of chicken factories, it's 90 days. So for them, it's just renewal of supply. It just disrupts their supply chain and what have you. So most of them are saying, listen, we don't see sick birds. We're not going for it. I think keep the government off your property, no PCR testing, no culling.
Well, then I'm not changing because that's where I was already at. Resist.
There you go.
And I'm obviously not going to sleep with the chickens, so no worries there.
Well, there's probably a massive exposure, but don't be fooled by legacy mortality data. We've been studying this very carefully. No significant human cases. We have data that Tamiflu and 3 other antivirals would work. We have data that hydroxychloroquine would work against it. And importantly, dilute povidone iodine or glucose iodine drops, nasal sprays and gargles, even iodine drops work fine. I'm not worried at all.
We talked a little bit there in the beginning of your remarks about the controversy with modern medicine. You mentioned the Gates Foundation and so forth. A lot of what you were saying, we've said on our show, and people tell us that we're conspiracy theorists and that none of that is true. Now, what you just said totally validated a lot of things, but...
Well, hang on. I can't let you sling around a propaganda term. Everybody listening to this show should recognize a propaganda term. Now, Vince was not conducting propaganda, but he was relaying what somebody else said. 6 terms I want everyone to know about. When they're being used, the person who's using it is trying to establish a power dynamic over someone else, and they are trying to impress their views upon someone else, and at the same time grab what we consider moral superiority. This is very important. Misinformation, disinformation, malinformation, anti-vaxxer, anti-science, conspiracy theorist.
Yes.
I don't use those words because they are tools. They were used extensively in the Third Reich in Nazi Germany. Yeah. Goebbels ran the Office of Propaganda. Don't use them. I reject them. In my field, I said, listen, there's just scientific observations, and we're just going to try to interpret them like we do, hypothesis testing, use the scientific method. There is no such thing as anti-science. There is no such thing that somebody represents science, like Fauci. Peter Hotez in Houston was on Twitter today saying that the National Homeland Security, FBI, CIA should be weaponized against the anti-science, anti-vaxxers. This type of stuff. This is how it started with eugenics. Remember, that's how this whole thing got weaponized. So what you want to do with each term is you want to turn it around. So you mentioned conspiracy theorists. I'll give you I'll give a props to Monica Schmidt, who's in Australia right now. She's in court right now in Australia because she was brave enough to go out and break the curfew over there, and she wasn't going to listen to the ridiculous things they did to people in Australia. She's facing her day in court right now. But she has a great video. Maybe you guys can B-roll it. It's called The Rational Theorist. And what it says, and I'm in the video. So what it says is that, listen, we're not conspiracy theorists. We're rational theorists. We all are. We have rational thoughts about what we're observing, and we put them together. Rational theorists, we can discuss it. It's a discussable thing. All of us have theories. I have theories about this studio. I have theories about, what's going on in the world, but they're all rational. The human mind constantly theorizes. But when someone calls you a conspiracy theorist, remember, conspiracy is not a bad word. Right. Conspiracy means you're working together. Yeah. Which we're doing right now.
Absolutely.
Bingo. We just diffused the whole thing.
Love it. And now y'all know why I consider Dr. McCullough to be a modern-day American hero. He has stood up and did it with confidence and plenty to back it up. And I've appreciated watching him over the last several years. Now, one thing that you made me think about while you were talking was big pharma and doctors. Now, there's a theory that doctors are being controlled and even bribed by big pharma. Can you give us any insight as a doctor what could or could not be true there?
The pharmaceutical companies, the in vitro diagnostic companies in the United States are world leaders. In fact, healthcare in the United States in many ways is kind of a jewel. We have the latest and greatest tests, technologies, devices, surgery. About 17% of the GDP is healthcare in the United States. And they're very good jobs. People work for these companies. They're great jobs. So I don't think we want to, quote, knock down big pharma, but we want to understand it. About 2/3 of all research in the United States is funded by pharmaceutical companies, device diagnostic companies, radiology companies, orthopedic companies. 2/3, right off the bat, because research is needed to gain product approval, so it's necessary for them. The second point here is that 99.999% of the drugs that we use are developed by pharmaceutical companies. 99% of the total hip replacements that are done are developed by companies. Same thing with pacemakers. So we're in a symbiotic relationship with them. I don't think it's not us versus big pharma. It really isn't. What we're concerned about, though, is that there's such sufficient power and control. I'm far more concerned about government control than I am about the pharmaceutical industry. Where, let me give an example, National Institutes of Health, which funds the other third of research. There are doctors who work at academic medical centers that are completely dependent upon the National Institutes of Health, and their medical centers are dependent on them. As a doctor gets a grant, let's say a doctor gets a $10 million grant, there's what's called indirects. Indirects is another free $10 million that goes to the organization. So as these grants come in, this is big time money. And where I've trained at several institutions where if a doctor does not get an NIH grant, there's no salary for that doctor. He literally works for free. So they are so invested in keeping in good stead with the National Institutes of Health. Quote, getting funded. You talk to the doctors, and I said, well, what type of research are you doing? Well, I'm funded. I said, but getting a grant's not research. What are you actually doing? And they're actually more concerned about the next NIH grant. So when we saw COVID roll in, and we saw that NIH was going to control Operation Warp Speed, the research agenda, the first sets of guidelines, and we saw everybody fall into lockstep. And the emergence of Anthony Fauci as really the key figure here. Everyone saw their NIH careers on the line. So to me, that was much bigger than a rubber chicken dinner from Pfizer.
Wow.
Well, we're coming up on a break here. We've got less than 2 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Doug, what do we ask Dr. McCullough that he can respond to properly?
I don't know. There's so many things I want to ask you, but one of the things I do want to ask you about is with the COVID vaccine, we were told from, you mentioned Noah Harari earlier. He said that we would remember the COVID vaccine as surveillance going under the skin. Have you heard him say that, and what do you know about that?
I think he's expressing an aspiration for trackability, or this first step towards transhumanism, to inject specifically genetic code in the human body and to somehow track its presence or its persistence in the body.
Okay. So just another way for them to track us and keep up with us is what he's hoping for. So do you see that maybe happening with like the bird flu? You said it's another type of vaccine like the COVID vaccine.
It appears to be more genetic loading. The agencies are clear on this. They are favoring the genetic products over the antigen-based or killed products. There's no doubt about it.
Wow.
Well, people ask us all the time, or they were asking us, is the COVID vaccine the mark of the beast? And we would tell them, no, it is not. Everything that we know, we cannot commit to this being the mark of the beast right now. So that's the motive behind Doug's question. I hear a break coming up in our ear, so we've got to cut to this really quickly, but we'll be right back with Dr. Peter McCullough. You don't want to go anywhere. We haven't even got into some of the nitty-gritty stuff that we hope to talk about, so you don't want to miss the second half of the show. We'll be right back after this break.
A voice spoke to me and said, I've got something I want to show you. I was so sure God had talked to me. And I was stunned by what I saw.
A direct fulfillment of this over 2,500-year-old prophecy. The United States will stand with Israel.
Why haven't I ever seen this before?
1/3 of humanity will die. What do these beasts symbolize?
The lion, the bear, the leopard.
The combined beast from Revelation 13 represents the end-time government of the Antichrist. Understanding the end time.
Now streaming on Endtime Plus and available to order at endtime.com/UET. Go to endtime.com/UET or call 800-ENDTIME.
What if you could understand Bible prophecy? Dave Robbins, the host of the Endtime Show's TV and radio programs, is holding a free prophecy conference near you. Gain peace and understanding about what the Bible says concerning end-time prophecy. Call 1-800-ENDTIME or go to endtime.com/events to see when Dave will be in a location near you.
Welcome back to the Endtime Show. Vince Stegall here with Doug Norvell and very special guest, Dr. Peter McCullough. Dr. McCullough, thank you again for being on the show. We're having a great conversation. I know the audience out there is loving it. Doug, we were talking a little bit about the COVID vaccine right before the break, and I know we wanted to get into this with Dr. McCullough because we talk about current events through the lens of Bible prophecy. We don't talk about, we just say we're not experts on the COVID vaccine. What we can tell you about is what the Bible says is coming. We don't see the COVID vaccine in Bible prophecy. So now that you're here with us, an expert, Doug, what all questions should we ask Dr. McCullough?
Well, Vince, one of the questions we get all the time is what we kind of touched on. Is this the mark of the beast? We know that it's not, but could this be a prelude to being tracked like we talked about before? Because we know the mark of the beast is going to be something that's going to be inserted in our hand or our forehead. As the Bible says, that it'll be a mark that will be in your right hand or in your forehead, and without this mark, you will not be able to buy, sell, or trade. Well, we saw some of that happening with the vaccine, which was why people were asking, because you couldn't, if you didn't have the vaccine, you couldn't, do certain things in certain countries. We had the big trucker.
You couldn't be in the U.S. military.
Yeah, and we saw the strike with the truckers because they wanted them to have the information on their cell phone. I can't ever remember what those things are called, QR codes and things like that. So we've seen them trying to push things like that. We know that Klaus Schwab wrote the book COVID-19 and the Great Reset. And do you see, because one of the questions we get all the time is with these vaccines, do you see that being part of the Great Reset? Like there's going to be a time where it's going to be like the vaxxed against the unvaxxed. Because they tried to do that anyway. I remember President Biden standing up on screen and say, we've just about had it with you people that will not get this vaccination. And they accused us of, killing grandma and everything else if we didn't get the vaccine. Well, most of our listeners probably didn't get the vaccine because of, they listen to people like you and they listen to other, channels that are kind of trying to get that truth out there about what that was about. But do you see it kind of being something eventually as they keep trying to push these vaccines out to where they're going to try to mandate that for every single person in the world?
You knew it was some type of mark because the descriptors came in as vaccinated and unvaccinated. Mm-hmm. But all the experts agree the vaccines didn't last very long. So after 2 or 3 months, somebody who took the shots was unvaccinated. But it didn't matter. If they still took them, they were still considered unvaccinated. So there were ridiculous things we saw with employers where they said, you have to be vaccinated. And then people had said, well, do I have to be vaccinated in the last 6 months? No, just at any time. But wait a minute, the vaccines 2 years ago is irrelevant. And so even to this day, recently, the American Board of Internal Medicine, which has been, relentless on pushing the vaccines, pursuing doctors who fought the narrative, sent out a message and said, well, would you like to be on a review panel? Because the board does rely on a lot of my research in their board questions. I said, well, sure. I said, well, you fill out this form. And I filled out this form. And it got to the point of vaccination. And it said, again, vaccinated at any time. It could have been 3 years ago. If I said no, sorry, you can't come to Philadelphia. But if I said yes, you could. Now, if I took 2 shots in 2021, it's irrelevant in 2024 from a health protection perspective.
Right.
And yet that stands today, and many companies have had this. So you knew it represented in some way a mark because it couldn't have been regarding protection or safety. And then we get into who took the vaccine. So we have data now in the United States where COVID States program, 3 Rasmussen surveys, and now revised CDC data is pretty clear. 75% of Americans took at least 1 shot. 25%, thank the Lord, didn't. Mm-hmm. Now, prior to all this, I took every vaccine that came along in the schedule. My kids took all the vaccines. I didn't critically review them. Traveled to India, I took more vaccines. I went to medical school, they said take more vaccines. So I'm personally been heavily vaccinated. But when the COVID vaccines came along, I had already had COVID. They looked dangerous to me. They looked, especially the messenger RNA vaccines. And I just told my patients, I'm not sure. If you were to take one, maybe the Janssen vaccine, I wasn't sure. I saw a patient today who was with me way back during the time. He took 1 Janssen vaccine. But what we've learned, of the 75% of Americans took a vaccine, 94% took a messenger RNA vaccine, which was Pfizer or Moderna. The rest of that 6% fraction is Janssen and a tiny percent Novavax, the only non-genetic vaccine. Most people have not heard about Novavax. It's still available today. Why did our FDA never tell us, and our CDC and otherwise never promoted the non-genetic option? I've always said if I had a gun to my head today and I had to take one, I would take Novavax, no doubt about it. Janssen is off the market. its partner AstraZeneca in the worldwide off the market.
Right.
Pfizer, Moderna still on the market. Why do we never hear about Novavax? Why is it a genetic-only strategy? Why is that featured? The other thing, too, is other countries didn't have the same configuration of vaccines. The Chinese had the Sinopharm Coronavac vaccine. That was a killed vaccine. Again, to take a shot, take any shot, it doesn't matter. Another thing was, if you had COVID, then even if you had COVID, take another shot. But then you got COVID again. Well, take another shot. We've never had an illness where you just keep taking shots, get the disease, take the shots, right? So the COVID-19 vaccines are FDA approved. And their approval says they are indicated to prevent COVID, period.
Yeah.
They do not reduce the risk of hospitalization and death. They do not reduce the rate. They don't stop transmission. They don't save grandmother. They're only to stop COVID. So it became obvious when, virtually everyone who took a COVID vaccine got COVID anyway. It became obvious they don't work. Fortunately, of that 75%, it was only, an absolute 15% number that ever took a booster, and then subsequent boosters, very few except for President Biden. We count publicly he took 6 COVID vaccines. I don't even have anybody in my practice who took 6 shots.
And you could see he's rapidly degenerated over these last almost 4 years. I mean, we've watched him decline. Do you feel like that's part of what's happening?
Let's have anybody listening to this type in, do you know anybody in your family, a senior citizen, who took the COVID vaccine, sadly, and they've gone into a rapid decline in dementia? It's all over social media. Believe me, it's all over social media. And dementia is close to most of us. My father died with it. And so I watched it firsthand. Most people listening know what we're talking about. Alzheimer's disease, Lewy body dementia, Parkinson's with neurocognitive decline. So Biden, a lot of people forget, he's had 2 brain surgeries. He has his skull opened twice for brain surgeries. Distant brain surgery can contribute to future dementia. He has chronic atrial fibrillation, which is at risk for microstrokes, even despite blood thinners. He's had that for years. He has sleep apnea that he wears at night. Even though he's not obese, he has trouble sleeping. That contributes to neurocognitive decline. And Doug, I think you're right. He has had a rapid decline with features of Alzheimer's, which is, kind of laughing to cover things up, his jaw kind of hanging open, clearly can't find names or compute. But he also has features of Parkinson's, where his small shuffling gait looks like he's going to fall forward. You've seen tripping up the stairs multiple times. But it's not classic for either. It's that syndrome of features of Alzheimer's, features of Parkinson's, but it's not classic that I see in the vaccinated. I think the vaccines have contributed to his rapid decline. Recently dropping out of the presidential race, and if he's not competent to be in the presidential race, a month ago he was, he's full charging ahead. Right. Then he's in my estimation, he wouldn't be competent to serve as commander-in-chief. And Kevin O'Connor, his doctor, needs to level with America. He's still saying he's fit for service.
Wow. Do you have a prediction on whether or not he will resign the presidency or not?
I don't think he's going to make it. What we know is once the diagnosis of dementia is solid, and it's been solid in him for about 2 years, the survival's only about two and a half years. My dad, who died with dementias, it was about 2.5 years. And the type of things, if Biden was my patient, the types of things we'd be talking about is no driving, no longer managing the checkbook, no cooking on a gas stove or any dangerous
presidency.
Wow.
So, don't go out alone in the neighborhood because, you hear about these silver alerts when people get lost or people live a senior home. I'd be very worried about hip fracture, radial fracture, cervical fracture, and falling. We see him fall multiple times. And I predicted he was going to have an intercurrent health event. Sure enough, it's COVID, potentially superimposed aspiration pneumonia, secondary pneumonia, a stroke. I don't think it's going to make it from a health perspective. It may be alive, but I don't think it's going to make it. It's just what happens is this rapid sequence now. I mean, everyone listening to this knows this. Once this sequence occurs, the sad thing is that his wife, Jill, couldn't see it. Normally the family, Hunter's not of any help, But the family steps in and says, Dad, it's time. It's time to take the keys away. The family should step in. But we saw this with Mitch McConnell. He also had probably a vaccine injury, neurodegenerative syndrome. Nobody stepped in the end. Dianne Feinstein, that was horrible. She had a vaccine injury syndrome where she had neuroinvasive zoster encephalitis. That's a classic, with Ramsay-Hunt syndrome. That's a classic vaccine injury. You know who else has that in a milder form? But it's ruined him. He has Ramsay-Hunt, is Justin Bieber. Hasn't been on stage in 2 years.
Wow, I had no idea about that. He is a lot younger.
Speaking of others, we've seen a lot about died suddenly. We've seen a lot about the NFL and what they've done. We've seen some injuries there. There's a lot of athletes globally that have just died suddenly or had cardiac arrest. Do you think that's connected to the COVID vax?
Absolutely. We've published now, Hosher and colleagues in Journal of European Society of Cardiology. Sadly, one of the first manifestations, the most common manifestation of a vaccine heart damage is a cardiac arrest. So most people actually don't feel any problems until that moment of a cardiac arrest. And everyone listening now knows someone who you know the reason and they die.
Yeah.
And when they get an autopsy, sadly, they're not staining for the vaccine messenger RNA, which can be measured with qPCR, or for the spike protein. They're not doing a detailed examination looking at the vaccine effect and saying, well, death due to natural causes. So the autopsies aren't helpful. But in the best autopsy data that we have of everybody dying after the vaccine right now, it's about 73.9% are attributed to the vaccine.
Wow. Well, you mentioned just now the spike protein. I saw, I guess it was on X, I saw a quote by you that said that the spike protein could be reversible. Is that true?
Now, the virus is a ball, and everyone knows that there's all these spikes on the surface. That's what we're talking about. The spike protein was engineered in the Wuhan Institute of Virology, a joint U.S.-Chinese program. Everyone should know this. It was intentionally made to invade the human body, and sadly, it gets stuck in the human body. Whether you've had COVID or the vaccine, the spike protein is stuck in the human body. It's like a thorn that's stuck in us. Travels in the bloodstream, it lands in organs. It's responsible for long COVID syndrome, for sure, and it's responsible for all the vaccine injury syndromes. This protein is a killer. I've never seen a protein as dangerous as this before.
Wow.
It just accelerates everything. Prior to COVID, the causes of death in the United States could be divided into 40% heart disease, 40% cancer, and 20% other causes. It turns out this spike protein is accelerating death in all of these categories.
Dr. McCullough, I hate to interrupt you. We've got one last break here we've got to go to. We'll be right back to talk more about that. Hopefully dedicate the whole segment to LGBTQIA+. See what Dr. McCullough has to say about that. You won't want to miss it. We'll be right back.
They that understand what is taking place will instruct many.
Except a man is born again, he can enter or see the kingdom of God.
I don't care what label you've been given or what label you've given yourself. You are essential. You still matter.
This is a journey, and when we get to the other side of that, that's where our prize is. That's where our reward is.
End time is not going anywhere.
Welcome back to the Endtime Show. Vince Stegall here, Doug Norvell, and Dr. Peter McCullough. We've covered so much ground. There's a lot more to cover. It's almost like we need a 2-hour show, Doug.
I'm telling you.
We've thrown that out there a little
Especially
while.
today.
Before the show, we were talking to Dr. McCullough, and we said we could talk to him for days about all the things.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we just have an hour today, and one segment left. We can't go the whole show without talking about LGBTQIA+. I don't think I failed to mention any of them. Transgenderism, Elon Musk. We just saw this interview, he and Tucker talking about his son. So what do we need to cover with Dr. McCullough about this in general?
Well, I think we just need to understand what he believes this is all about, because, I mean, this is a movement. I mean, we see it. It's a movement that's happening, and I don't know, I can't really fathom what it's about other than it's about good versus evil again. I mean, when we're challenging what we're born with, and saying that you can change that, then they're altering our bodies. And I feel like for a long time, just me personally, and I want to get to what you have to say, but I feel like for a long time they've been trying to neuter men. They've been trying to take away testosterone and keep us from being men and turning us, more womanly, I guess would be a good word. But give us your perspective on that. What is going on with the transgenderism, especially right now?
Doug, with your big, broad shoulders and Vince, it just won't work. You're men.
We don't want it to work.
You're men, and I will affirm your gender. We're 3 men.
Yes.
Gender affirmation is a good word.
Yes.
So quickly, there's always been a small number of people who have a sexual preference for the same sex. Mm-hmm. Homosexuality's been around for a long time, but it's tiny. Roman Empire. There has been an activity. You mentioned neutering. Well, in the Bible, we have eunuchs, right? Mm-hmm. Eunuchs. In the Ottoman Empire, for instance, it was eunuchs who looked after the big harem of women. Right. So this has been around, but it's a small thing, and it's not something that an average boy or girl ever considers. What's happened over time? This is mind-boggling. Is we have gone from, as a child, the rate of autism was 1 in 10,000. It's now 1 in 36 and growing.
Wow.
It's the most rapidly growing childhood illness. Now, there's increased recognition and what have you, but it's an autism explosion. It's linked to something that's going on in early childhood, because it always starts between kind of ages 0 to 4, and it is tightly correlated with excessive childhood vaccination. When I was a kid, there was 3 shots against 5 diseases. Now a kid today, including the COVID shots, take them every 6 months. We're looking at 108 shots.
Oh, my goodness.
In one of the visits between ages 1 and 2, the kids get, I think, over a dozen shots at once.
Wow.
And there's a published study by Nielsen and colleagues. If they get a febrile seizure, they get a reaction, the brain, in a sense, gets damaged, and they end up with autism. Mm. So the leading thinking now is that hyper-vaccination or excessive vaccination is a risk factor for autism. Why does that matter? Because autistic children have high rates of ostracism. They feel ostracized. They're not the high school quarterback or the cheerleader. They're not the most popular people. Right. And now all the research suggests it's autistic kids that are easily influenced, indoctrinated. And part of this movement is a flood of pornography into K through 12, influencing the autistic kids. An autistic kid could be suggestible. They feel they don't fit in. They seek counseling. The counselor says, well, maybe you should change your gender. Now we're off to the transgender program, the gender journey.
Why'd the counselor say that? What's wrong with these people?
There is something going on. You're right. It's recent. 10 years ago, I didn't see any of this.
Right.
But within the last 5 years, this is astounding. 2021, the American Medical Association put out a recommendation. Doctors should not put the gender on the birth certificate.
Wow.
This has been going on for centuries. Suddenly, what happened? Now we have the Endocrine Society, American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, American Board of Pediatrics, all saying that if a child has gender dysphoria, they're not happy with their gender, the immediate thing to do is to start puberty blockers and stop them entering puberty. And then if they're after puberty, start androgens or estrogens, and then start to commit these surgeries. The surgeries, mastectomy in young girls, breast implants for boys, the surgeries down below, and I'll just say what they are. The boys get the testicles removed, orchiectomy. The penis is slit open and then inverted back into the pelvis is called a penile inversion vaginoplasty. The girls have a distortional surgery to the clitoris called a metoidioplasty, and then finally the phalloplasty was a big chunk of skin taken out of the tissue taken out of the arm or leg to try to make a rudimentary penis. The surgeries are sterilizing, they're disfiguring, they don't drain urine correctly, they get infected. There's all kinds of complications, need for revisions. The hormones make the kids sick. Reviews on that show that the puberty blockers, they're so dangerous, they've been banned now in the UK, just to give you an idea. So the package of transgender medicine has been studied. It increases the burden of psychiatric care. It's sterilizing, disfiguring, and it leads to increased rates of homicide, suicide, and death and other causes. So transgender medicine in the youth is so dangerous that 25 states now have banned it, including Texas. And we are headed for an epic battle because the HHS Assistant Secretary, the number 2 person in healthcare in the United States, Levine, is a man who is fantasizing as a woman, so he dresses up like a woman. And now he has taken a case to the Supreme Court against Tennessee to try to overturn the statewide bans on transgender for the youth. So the point is, autistic children and adults tend to have this tendency, number one. Number two, there's this massive pouring of pornography in there and influence. The sad thing is, I'm a doctor. What ethical doctor or nurse or administrator or technician would ever participate in this?
Yeah.
We took an oath to do no harm. That's the Hippocratic Oath. So doctors can't police themselves, and so states have to come in. We are in historic times.
Wow. Let me ask you this, because this may sound weird to you. I don't know, but
nothing sounds weird to Dr. McCullough.
We've gone everywhere.
Well, we know that the world government, we talked about earlier, that they're about population control. They want to reduce the population. We've heard it out of their mouth. One way to reduce the population, I've heard Gates say, is through, doing vaccinations and things like that. There's video of him out there saying it. And so is that maybe part of this agenda, why it's being pushed so much and backed so much by, I guess it's one party more than another, but it seems like this is something that, because they made an attack on the home, right, and they made it to where, both parents are having to work all the time, and the kids are coming home by themselves, and then they're exposed to these things on TV, and they're exposing that into our children at a very young age now with the transgenderism and homosexuality and things like that. And you talked about pornography. Of course, it's at, the touch of our finger now with our phones and things like that. Do you think this is part of a war, not only on the family, but maybe on the population? Because if we're doing this, we're not going to be reproducing, right? We're not going to be making more, what did you say earlier? They called us senseless eaters, or what is it? Useless eaters, yeah. So could that be part of what's happening here?
I think it's more direct. Stephen Hotze, really a great physician in Katy, Texas, led really the effort in Austin to ban transgender medicine. He was there every session. And then the transgender community was there as well. Very vociferous, saying that they have rights and they're people too, and transgender medicine shouldn't be banned. And we're not being exclusive. Listen, doctors, I take care of transgender patients. I take care of LGBT patients. We are the most inclusive of all the specialties and all the professions. So there's no discrimination here. We're just talking about something that worsens psychiatric disease, sterilizing, disfiguring, increases mortality. It just can't go on. Hotze told me that at some of the breaks, the transgender community, they held satanic rituals in the Texas Capitol. You can see evidence of this online.
Wow.
I think it's very direct. A good example is Bruce Jenner. Remember Bruce Jenner?
Yeah.
Wasn't he the most handsome, studly, manly guy when he won the decathlon?
Yeah.
Now look at what he's transformed into.
Right.
If you ask me, I think it's Satan mocking God, distorting God's creation. And my heart goes out to these transgender people. I don't think they have any idea what's going on in their bodies. They look forlorn. They look confused. Many actually show great regret afterwards. They're horrified. And you heard the recent story about Elon Musk and his son.
Yeah. Yeah, it's heartbreaking. And I guess, refreshing is not the word, but I'm glad to hear you say that's what you think it is, that Satan's driving it, that he's behind it.
It seems too direct.
Yeah, you were already a hero to me, because I learned a lot from you during this COVID situation. One of the reasons why I didn't get the vaccine, because I fought it with ivermectin and things like that. So to hear you say that it just adds to that.
But
now you're a
you,
bigger hero.
But have you seen some of these gay pride parades where there is,
yes.
muzzles and things that look satanic? I have one image that I captured of a gay pride where it's the gay colors, the pride colors,
right,
and celebrating Satan. Celebrating Satan. So it just seems so direct. I don't think this is Klaus Schwab pulling the strings. If you look at this biopharmaceutical complex and Bill Gates and Klaus Schwab and Anthony Fauci and all these characters, they appear to be instruments through which Satan is working. Yeah. This one's a direct thing. This is just a direct mockery of this, and it's been set up over time. Do you know in 2016, the Obama administration and in Obamacare, that legislation was passed that transgender hormones and surgery must be covered by Medicare, Medicaid, and commercial insurance. Wow. It's the only thing that must be covered. Like it's an essential thing. It didn't exist 10 years ago, but now it's essential. No one can explain this. The doctors, there isn't a single doctor that comes out there and says, yeah, I'm proud to be doing this. But yet the academic medical centers have tops clinics and bottoms clinics. But no one wants to actually show their faces doing it.
Wow. Well, I may have the year wrong, but Obama is also the president that made homosexuality legal in every state. I think it was 2011.
Yeah,
remember this stuff?
Right. Yes.
It was illegal in every state until President Obama.
I think it's important for the listeners to understand. People are born as boys and girls. Period. Just reason why you get an ultrasound ahead of time, and the nursery is either pink or blue. Yeah. So we're born as boys or girls. We affirm gender kind of ages 0 through 8, where a little boy is told he's going to become a man. That's gender affirmation is a good thing. A little girl's told she's going to become a woman. Okay. Now, beyond age 18, when people are adults, there's a small fraction of people who have other sexual choices. That's their right to do that. If they want to do that, if a man wants to appear like a woman and wants to go through all of that and bear all the costs of that, what have you, that's his choice.
Right.
We accept them the same. So we accept transgender people the same. We accept them. I accept them in my office. We accept them in our work of life. LGBT, we accept them. That's not that they're being excluded, and this is not, this is not prejudiced in any way. But we're talking about the youth here. The youth is very important.
Dr. McCullough, we accept them as well. As Christians, we say, you can come into this community just like me. You need to be born again. And so we send people to endtime.com/reborn to learn what that actually means.
Good for you.
And then you're transformed. The disciple says you're born again, you're transformed. So you've got 15 seconds. We're at the end of the show. How would you like your last words to be for 15 seconds?
I just want to thank you and just thank the audience and the people at End Time. And, God has this. Amen. We're in a time of great controversy, and we all must really look to God to show us providence.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Dr. McCullough, for joining us.
Yes.
Thank you for watching. You need to look up Dr. Peter McCullough on social media. Go to his website. Support him in every way. You need his book as well. Go support Dr. Peter McCullough in every single way. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget to go to watch.endtime.com. We have a big announcement coming next Thursday, August 1st at 11 a.m. It's only going to be for End Time Plus subscribers, so go check that out. We'll see you back here tomorrow.